දවස් 30ක්ම unlimited Netflix බලන්න. unlimited data pack එකක් මුළු පවුලටම unlimited fun එකක් අරගන්න. අදම active කරගන්න.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, wish list. Tea exporters voice their expectations from budget 2021.
We are hopeful that export credit facilities will be increased.
Daunting task. Chairman of the International Fiscal Association's Sri Lanka branch believes that the island has to be inventive in finding revenue generation streams.
We are talking of out-of-the-box situation. I think we have to talk without a box now.
Hemmed in. More assurances of Western Province travel ban being lifted at midnight tomorrow. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Saturday the 14th of November 2020.
Nava sunlight sakura. Then Dikukal pavathina sakura mal suandin.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanaka. Now, out-of-the-box thinking is what is required to identify new revenue-generating streams while cherry-picking the taxes when moving Sri Lanka forward. This is the view of Chartered Accountant N.R. Gajendran, who is the chairman of the International Fiscal Association's Sri Lanka branch. Speaking to Indi Variyamwatha on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24 today, Gajendran also highlighted the need for flexibility in policymaking in what he termed the new order brought on by COVID-19.
We see the country not just being hit by COVID-19, multiple shocks to the economy from the Easter attacks. What do you observe here and where we go from here?
Because of these multiple challenges, there is a huge belief that we will have to resort to borrowings. And that is the reason some people are talking of the debt traps. But Sri Lanka, as it has been clarified, we have all settled our debts. But we are going to have a daunting task for raising revenue.
We see most of these revenue streams have been shut.
Basically, all taxes have been abolished. It's no longer there. It's only income tax and value-added tax. And one of the greatest expectations of when these taxes were reduced from the people was that prices will come down. It didn't happen. It's a non sequitur really. And I don't think this government will reverse its revenue proposals because they are emphasizing on consistency and business confidence.
We have limited taxes now. Does this not mean that we are an attractive nation for foreign direct investments?
Exactly. And this has to be promoted. We are one of the lowest tax territories in the world. There are other factors that maybe a foreign investor looks at, and we may have to count on those things, and we have to show example and demonstrate to the world that this is a place for easy investment, to easy doing business and easy exit.
How do we look at tax income going forward in the new year 2021?
COVID has set a new order. It is ordering us to behave because the nature doesn't need us, we need nature. So, and what has COVID done is taking us about 300-400 years back.
Imports are restricted. We also have that segment who depends on a lot of income through imports.
I think it's time, hard time, that we have to look into our expenditure. We are talking of out-of-the-box situation. We have heard even the head of state talking of out-of-the-box. I think we have to talk without a box now. If you just cut down 10%, 20%, it's 250 billion or 500 billion. That may give you the answer.
Certain taxable areas have not been exploited, especially e-commerce and cross-border transactions. How do we bring these into the tax net?
That's a policy measure. That's something they may look at going forward. At the moment, there is no luxury living also, no flying around, no eating around, no buying clothes, It's we are going back to a very primitive form.
How do we go about introducing tax measures without burdening the people?
I believe in the manifestos it was mentioned simple simplified taxes will be introduced. Taxation without legislation is highway robbery. Even at this point of time, certain taxes, we have not discussed that point, taxes have been imposed without legislation. That's another matter for contention. There has to be cherry picking on imposition of the tax, the type of tax, and on whom it has to be imposed.
I wanted to discuss with you about the problems in existing laws, but then again you did talk about taxation without legislation.
If your interest income is more than 3 million collectively with all your income, earlier you would have been taxed at 5%, but now you can get taxed progressively at higher rate and it can go up to 18%. So that is an imposition of tax more than what was before. That is not in law yet. So those laws have to be made quickly. Fortunately, no one has gone to courts.
You've advocated for a tax policy framework.
Right along this country, our policy making, fiscal and tax policy making has been ad hoc on the run. There is no permanent team or research team which studies, analyzes things, data and information and makes recommendations and policies after interaction with the stakeholders, the private sector, the professionals. And also with COVID, you can't have consistent policies also, because we can't think for 3 years, 2 years, 5 years down the line now.
Safeguard hand sanitizer නවතම නිෂ්පාදන පෙළ නීරෝගිමත් දිවියකට ලංකාවේ පළමු වරට හඳුන්වා දෙන මැලිබන් වෙජි ක්‍රැකර්
Crunchy veggie.
Now then, in our segment Budget Expectations, we spoke to Chairman of the Tea Exporters Association Sri Lanka, Sanjay Hera, today to find out what they wish to see in the looming budget. What we found out is that in addition to the expectation of a stable fiscal and monetary policy that will promote an export-driven economy, they expect an increase in export credit facilities.
In relation to the budget, we expect a stable fiscal and monetary policy of the government to ensure it facilitates an export-driven economy, encouraging the exporters to create value-added exports and maximize revenue. In particular, we are hopeful that export credit facilities will be increased to accommodate market penetration, and also in order to address the cash flow problems that the exporters are facing by extending the ESC recovery period from 3 to 5 years. We believe each industry should be self-sustainable, and to this end, we have forwarded 2 proposals to the Sri Lanka Tea Board, requesting them to use the accumulated promotional fund which we have solely contributed, which is almost 7 billion as of today, by granting an interest subsidy for modernization of tea processing facilities in order to increase productivity, and also to introduce incentive scheme for the incremental increase in export revenue year on year for value-added teas 3 kilos and below.
Now moving on with other local stories, Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter Sunday terror attacks of last year heard that former President Maithripala Sirisena, in his capacity as the Minister of Plantations, had approved the lease of 35 acres of land to the Hira Foundation back in 2012, where the controversial Batticaloa campus was later built. Also, the PCOI heard that the lease was sought by the Hira Foundation on the back of a document which was issued by the Department of Social Services confirming the entity's registration with it.
The Director of Land at the Mahaveli Authority, Asanka Udayakumara, gave evidence before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter Sunday terror attacks yesterday. He told the commission that Chairman of the Hira Foundation, MLA Hizbullah, sought 35 acres of land from the Mahaveli Authority on the 15th of March in 2012 for a vocational training institute. Udayakumara said that in the application of the Hira Foundation, a request was made for 35 acres of Mahaveli Authority land to set up a vocational training institute in line with aid provided by a Saudi Arabia vocational training institute. He went on to say that then Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva had asked officials to look into the possibility of giving the Hira Foundation a suitable land, and as such, land was released for the Hira Foundation under the condition of lease, following notification of the resident land manager and the approval from the director board. The commission then told the witness, quote, "Normally land is given to a person or a legal entity. What is considered legal entities are institutions which are registered under the Companies Act. So how can the Hira Foundation, which requested the 35 acres, be a legal entity?" Unquote. The witness replied, quote, "The Hira Foundation had submitted a document which certifies that it had been registered with the Department of Social Services. These land have been acquired via that document." Unquote. The State's Council then asked the witness as to who was the subject minister at the time when the 35 acres of land belonging to the Mahavalley Authority was leased out to build the Batticaloa campus. Director of Land at the Mahavalley Authority, Asanka Udayakumara, responded saying that former President Maithripala Sirisena was the then Minister of Plantation and he approved the lease of the land in question.
We will see you once more on the other side of this break with the latest on Sri Lanka's COVID-19 pandemic situation. Bear with us.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
Now we start with the news we just received. Now, Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva has confirmed that the areas of Maradana, Fort, Petta, Slave Island, Dam Street in Colombo will be isolated from 5 a.m. on Monday, the 16th of November. Now, let me tell you that once more. Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva has confirmed that the areas of Maradana, Fort, Petta, Slave Island and Dam Street in Colombo will be isolated from 5 a.m. On Monday, the 16th of November, and the rest of the isolated areas will continue to remain as it is. Moving on with other local stories, Hindu devotees world over today celebrated Diwali, known as the Festival of Lights. Deepavali, I should say, is celebrated as the symbol of peace and joy to mark the victory of good over evil, light over darkness and knowledge over ignorance. Hindu devotees across the country too were seen engaging in religious observances in accordance with health and safety protocols mandated by the health authorities.
Deepavali, which means row of lights, is a festival of new beginnings and the triumph of good over evil and light over darkness. According to Hindu mythology, it is believed that many centuries ago on this day, the Prince of Ayodhya, Lord Rama, had returned home with his wife Sita and younger brother Lakshmana after spending 14 years in exile and upon clashing with and defeating the evil forces of King Ravana. As such, people of Ayodhya had welcomed the trio by lighting lamps, a tradition that has continued till date. Extending his wishes on this occasion, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa says that cultural festivals of this nature provide great opportunity to build communal reconciliation and mutual understanding among the people and empower ethnic and religious harmony. The head of state adds that at a time when the entire world is facing unprecedented difficulties induced by COVID-19, such an opportunity to observe and celebrate one's own religious beliefs is indeed a consolation. He concludes the message by wishing all those who celebrate this festival attain the inner peace they expect. Meanwhile, in his Deepavali message, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa says that Deepavali reminds people to dedicate themselves to overcome every challenge together as a community. He went on to say that as the country strive to overcome the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic together, the country must also strive to uplift each other and ensure our shared quest of a bright and peaceful future for Sri Lanka is realized. Hindu devotees across the island were seen celebrating Deepavali today while adhering to safety protocols stipulated by the Ministry of Health.
Now, turning the attention to Sri Lanka's pandemic situation, 159 more COVID-19 infected prison inmates have been identified during the last cycle. Commissioner General of Prisons Tushar Upuldin stated that 329 cases have been reported from 4 prisons so far. The number of cases emerging from the Gampaha district is on the decline, but the infections within the Colombo municipality, however, is on the increase.
468 cases of COVID-19 were reported in the country yesterday across 17 districts. The highest among them was detected from the Colombo district, amounting to 282. 165 cases were reported from the MOH divisions of Colombo 1 to Colombo 15, which are considered to be the choke points of the district. In addition, the area of Jampata Street reported 48 cases of the virus. 45 infections meanwhile were detected from the area of Mattakulia, while 8 infected persons were identified from Modara. The rest of the infections of the Colombo district were confirmed from 12 of its MOH divisions. Meanwhile, the number of infections reported from the Gampaha district is on the decline, with only 43 cases being reported yesterday. The other districts reporting new infections are Kaluthara with 10 and Kurunagala and Ratnapura with 6 cases each. Furthermore, 5 were confirmed from the Kegaul district yesterday, 4 from Gaul, 3 from Kandy, 1 each from the districts of Putlam, Matale, Munaragala and Nuwara. The districts of Hambantota, Anuradhapura, Ampara, Mathura and Badulla also confirmed an infection each. Also among the new infections are 75 prison inmates, 17 police officers and 4 foreign nationals. Since the 1st of this month, 4,538 cases have been reported in 23 out of 25 districts, with the exceptions being Mullaitivu and Kilinochchi. In the meantime, the total number of infected persons emanating from the Minuwangoda apparel factory and Paliyagoda fish market clusters have increased to 12,690.
ලංකාව විදිහට දවසකට රෝගීන් 500කට ආසන්න ගාණක් දිනපතා අපේ සංඛ්‍යා ලේඛන වලට එකතු වෙන තත්ත්වයක් නිර්මාණය වෙලා තියෙනවා. දැන් ඔක්තෝබර් මාසෙට විතරක් රෝගීන් 10000කට වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් අපේ මේ සංඛ්‍යා ලේඛන වලට එකතු වුණා ලංකාවේ ඇතුලේ මේ අලුත් රැල්ලත් එක්ක. අහඹු සමාජ නියති පරීක්ෂාව හරියට සිද්ධ වෙච්ච නැති හින්දා තමයි එකපාරටම තැන් තැන් වලින් පොකුරු මතුවෙන්නේ. විශේෂයෙන්ම වසංගත රෝග විද්‍යාංශයේ අධ්‍යක්ෂකවරයා ඊ දවසේ කරපු ප්‍රකාශ හරහා අපිට පේන්න තියෙන දේ තමයි එතුමා තාම පිළිගන්නේ නැහැ සමාජ නියති කරන්න ඕනයි කියන එක. ඉලක්කයට ගන්න නැතුව හතර අතේ වෙඩි තියන්න කියලා අපි කියන්නෙත් නැහැ. ඉලක්කයක් තියෙන්න ඕන. ඉලක්කය හඳුනගෙන වැඩේ කරන්න ඕන. ඒ නිසා අපි යෝජනා කරනවා මේ සඳහා ක්‍රමවේදයක් රටට හදලා ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න. ජනාධිපතිතුමාට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න අපි අහමු නියති වලට යන්නේ කොහොමද?
To date, 3,106 infections have emerged from the Minuwangoda cluster, while 9,584 infections have been identified from the Paliyagoda fish market cluster. 7,606 patients from the 2 clusters have since completely recovered. 40 people emerging from these 2 clusters, however, have succumbed. In another development, 3 inmates of the Mahara prison have tested positive for the virus. Meanwhile, 89 infections were detected yesterday from the Old Bogambara prison, 13 inmates and a jailer from the Kuruvita prison, and 44 inmates from the Busa prison, increasing the number of infections cropping up from prisons to 329. The recent protest by a group of inmates at the Old Bogambara prison was discussed today during the Social Infrastructure Development Committee meeting of the Kandy district.
සිද්ධිය වෙච්ච වෙලාවේ මම මේක ඇතුළට ගියා. තව ටික වෙලා ගියා නම් බන්ධනාගාරේ ඉදිරිදොරක් කඩාගෙන සියලු දෙනා නගරයට එනවා. මේක වළක්වන්න විකල්පයක් නැති නිසා මමත් ගියා. ගිහලා මම මේ හැම අයටම කතා කරා. කතා කරලා ඒගොල්ලෝ සංසුන් කරගෙන ඒ වෙනකොට එතන හිටියා 248ක් දවස් 22ක් සම්පූර්ණ කරපු ගෙනිච්ච නැති අය. ඒ 248 දෙනාගේ එක මිලිමුනේ අපිව PCR කරලා තියෙන්නේ. අපි නෙගටිව් අපිව ගෙනියන්නේ නැත්නම් අපිටත් පොසිටිව් වෙයි කියලා. බන්ධනාගාරේ තව ස්ටාෆ් එකක් අවශ්‍යයි. මෙතන මේ තත්ත්වයේ දිගට මේ අය තව දුරට ගේනවා නම් මේ ප්‍රමාණවත් නැහැ මේ ස්ටාෆ් එක. මේගොල්ලන්ගේ ෆුඩ් ඇන්ඩ් බෙවරේජස් යන හොයන්න ඕනේ. ඒව ගෙනියන්න කරන්න වාහනය ජීප් එකක් වගේ මොනවද පහසුකම් දෙන්න ඕනේ. ඉතින් මෙන්න මේ යටිතල පහසුකම් ටික හැදුවොත් පුළුවන් මේ නගරේ බේර ගන්න නැත්නම් බන්ධනාගාරයේ මේ තියෙන මේ වෙනකොට තියෙන තත්ත්වය නිසා නගරේට ලොකු අවදානමක් තත්ත්වයක් තියෙනවා. මේ ඉන්න නිලධාරීන් දෙක වැඩ කළා නගරයට යනවා කියන්නේ භයානක දෙයක් නේ. ඒ නිසා අද ඉඳලා ඒක වහාම ඒ කට්ටිය නවත්තලා තියුවොත් ගන්න වෙයි. ඒගොල්ලෝ ගෙවල් වලට යනවා. මේක සීල් කරලා ඔක්කොම නවත්තන්න එළිය නැණේවත් අපි ආරක්ෂා මැදෙන් දැනුම් දුන්නා. ඔබතුමාලා එක්ක අදම සාකච්ඡාවක් යනවා.
In the meantime, Hotel Taj Samudra in Colombo yesterday confirmed infections of 4 employees, adding that all of them were asymptomatic. Releasing a statement, the hotel mentioned that all necessary steps have been taken as per the guidelines mandated by the government. Meanwhile, Cinnamon Grand Colombo too released a statement notifying that a staff member has tested COVID-19 positive. The statement also notes that the first and the second line of contacts of the infected person is being identified, while adding that the entity is working closely with authorities to prevent a further spread. With the fresh infections, the number of COVID-19 infected persons confirmed in the country since the beginning of the pandemic spikes to 16,405. With the island reporting 11,324 recoveries, the number of active cases is at 5,028.
Now, Senior DIG in charge of the Western Province, Deshabandhu Tennakoon, says that the travel restrictions that were placed over the Western Province will be lifted at midnight tomorrow, echoing the words of the Army Commander from yesterday. Tennakoon also added that a decision will also be taken regarding lifting the status of isolation in some areas. As such, the public are warned not to violate the quarantine regulations in isolated areas, as drones are deployed to identify errant citizens who disregard stipulated regulations. In the meantime, the police today arrested the suspect who had shared fake news on social media, which alleged that people are falling dead on roadside after being infected with COVID-19.
The police announced today that they arrested a 35-year-old man who had created and shared fake news via social media platforms depicting persons alleged to have been deceased owing to COVID-19. The suspect was ordered to be remanded until the 18th of November after he was produced before the Magistrates Court in Kandy. The police media spokesperson said that investigations are being conducted on 4 other persons who had shared the post in question.
දැන් අපේ තියෙන තොරතුරු අනුව මේ 46කින් එකක් තමයි ඒ ආකාරයට වෙලා තියෙන්නේ ඔහුත් යාචකෙක්. දැන් ඒ පින්තූර දාපු අය දන්නවා ඇති වෙන මොනවා හරි වුණා නම් ඒක කොහොමද කියලා ඉතින් අපිට ඒ තොරතුරු ලබා ගන්න අවශ්‍යයි. ඒකට ඒගොල්ලන්ට උත්තර දෙන්න බැරි වුණොත් අපිට සිද්ධ වෙනවා නිරෝධායන රීති වගේම අනිකුත් නීතීන් යටතේ අසත්‍ය පුවත් ප්‍රචාරය කිරීම මගින් මේ ජනතාව අතර යම් ආකාරයක අසන්තෝෂය ඇති කිරීම ඒ වගේම ජනතාව කලබලයට පත් කිරීම නිරෝධායන රීති ගැන විශ්වාසය නැති කිරීම මේ කරුණු සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඔවුන්ට විරුද්ධව ඉදිරියේදී නඩු පවරන්න.
In the meantime, with Colombo continuing to report higher numbers of COVID-19 infections, a travel ban was slapped on the Western Province from midnight on the 11th, and it will continue to stay in effect until midnight tomorrow. Meanwhile, Senior DIG of the Western Province, Deshabandhu Tennakoon, says that a decision will be taken in the future pertaining to the lifting of curfew in isolated areas.
The National Dangerous Drug Control Board has introduced a hotline to provide assistance to drug addicts and their family members. Now, the hotline 1927 will be available 24 hours a day in all 3 languages. Chairman of the National Dangerous Drug Control Board, Dr. Laknath Velagadara, says that drug addicts have been identified as a vulnerable group due to the country's COVID-19 situation. He stated that the hotline was introduced to address the issues faced by drug addicts and their close associates in seeking medication and counselling services. We will see you shortly after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, customs clearance of containers accumulated at the Colombo port is set to continue over the weekend. Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, General Dayaratnaka, says that the decision was arrived at to clear the backlogged cargo today and tomorrow, which piled up as a result of the delays brought on by the COVID-19 situation. He added that though activities at the port are conducted continuously, it is done amid numerous challenges. The chairman of the Ports Authority said that 60 of its workers have tested positive for the virus, while another group was directed to quarantine. He also noted that persons in isolated areas are also unable to report to work, which resulted in having to recall retired employees and qualified persons of other institutions to assist in cargo clearance. General Ratnayaka, however, assures that import and export trading activities would not be hindered in any way. Now, oil prices fell about 2% yesterday, pressured by swelling output from Libya and fears that rising coronavirus infections may slow the recovery in the global economy and fuel demand. Brent crude fell about 1.7% to settle at $42.78 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude futures fell by 2.4% to end at $40.13 a barrel. For the week, both notched gains of more than 8%. Libyan oil production rose to 1.2 million barrels per day, up from its previously reported production of 1 million barrels per day. Now, the S&P 500 and Dow Jones posted their second straight weekly gains and their best two-week run since April, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq ended the session below last Friday's close. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 1.37% to 29,479.81, while the S&P 500 gained 1.36% to 3,585.15. The Nasdaq Composite also rose by 1.02% to 11,829.29. European stocks ended flat as rising fears of economic damage from the pandemic offset recent vaccine optimism. However, the benchmark index notched its second straight week of gains. The Pan-European Stock 600 index, meanwhile, rose 0.01%. Now then, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has won the state of Georgia, the first Democratic candidate to do so since 1992. The win solidifies Biden's victory, giving him a total of 306 votes in the Electoral College. President Donald Trump is projected to win North Carolina, reaching 232 votes. Trump, who has not yet conceded, alluded for the first time to a possible new administration in January. Looking subdued, the president stopped short of acknowledging his defeat during a briefing of his coronavirus task force at the White House. They were his first public comments on the election since his defeat was projected by the U.S. media. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.